In 2025, 12 soldiers were handed an order that no human being should ever follow. Execute your own comrades and leave no witnesses. Instead of obeying, they said no and walked out through a live minefield to prove it. Lee Soo-jin, a North Korean special operations lieutenant and mine detection expert, risked everything not to escape, but to deliver a message to the world. This is the story of 12 women who chose their humanity over their orders. If these stories matter to you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Stay with us until the end. It all started like this. My name is Lee Soo-jin. I'm 34 years old. In South Korea, I go by a different name now, but the one from up north still feels more like me. I was born in Moranbong District, Pyongyang. My father was a senior official in the Korean Workers' Party Propaganda Bureau. Because of that, our family received rations on time, something most people couldn't count on. On holidays, my mother would pan-fry tofu in oil and set it on the table. She'd spoon the hot tofu rice into my bowl and say, "Soo-jin, eat up. It's best while it's warm." When I asked why she wasn't eating, she'd just smile and run her hand over my head. I already had a bite at the market. "Don't worry about me, just eat." I believed her. I cleared my bowl without a second thought. It wasn't until much later that I understood every bite she put in my bowl came straight off her own plate. The day I figured that out, something shifted in me. If the food on our table came from someone else's sacrifice, what did that mean for everything else the government claimed to give us? The day I volunteered for the military at 18, my father walked me to the gate. He grabbed my shoulder, firm, deliberate, and said, "Soo-jin, once you're a soldier, the country will take care of you. Serve with pride." I believed him. Or rather, I wanted to believe him. Those two things look the same from a distance. They're not. Belief has evidence behind it. Wanting to believe means closing your eyes when there isn't any. Looking back, I think some part of me already sensed something was wrong. I just didn't have words for it yet. The uniform issued on my first day was 3 sizes too big. The sleeves swallowed my hands. The stiff khaki fabric scraped against my skin, and the whole thing reeked of mothballs and storage. Standing there drowning in it, my fellow recruit Young A grabbed my sleeve and laughed. "Lee Soo-jin, did you put on a blanket by mistake? You'll disappear into that thing by the second drill." I shot back without missing a beat. "Oh yeah? At least I can walk. Yours looks like it'll fall right off your hips." We laughed, the kind of laugh you can only manage when you still don't know what's coming. That was the last time I laughed like that. Freely, without watching over my shoulder. Inside the unit, even laughter was monitored. Too much joy meant weak discipline. Too much silence meant suspicious thoughts. We lived in the narrow space between those two, reading the room every single day. Choosing the right expression like picking the right tool. 3 years in, I was assigned to a special operations battalion. Landmine detection and neutralization, that was our mission. My first day, the senior sergeant clapped me hard on the shoulder. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Lee. You just became the most useful person in this country." The most useful person. At the time, it sounded like a compliment. It took me years to hear what it really meant. Useful things get used, and when they're no longer needed, they get discarded. Every one of our 12 lives was already written into that single sentence. We just didn't know it yet. Training was brutal. Up at 4 in the morning, lights out at 10 at night. 16 hours in between belonged entirely to the unit. Mine detection drills were the ones that kept me up at night. The instructor had a line he repeated constantly. "Tense up and you die. Relax and you also die. Stay sharp." It sounded like a joke the first time. It wasn't. Grip the detector too tight and your hands shake, you miss placement. Let your guard drop and you miss the pattern. Survival meant threading that needle every single day. Around that time, I started keeping a worn notebook in my chest pocket. Years of handwritten data, mine laying patterns, terrain notes, seasonal shifts. The standard North Korean pattern left gaps of roughly 3 to 5 feet on flat ground. But the DMZ was different. The terrain was uneven, and the ground froze and thawed with each season, pushing mines inches out of position. In muddy riverbank sections, they used trip-wire mines instead of pressure triggers. On slopes, placement ran perpendicular to the contour lines, not along them. Every night before sleep, I read those pages. The way some people recite a prayer. One night, Corporal Omi Sohn leaned over and looked at the notebook. "Platoon leader, Why do you read that every day? Don't you have it memorized? I closed the cover. Memorizing it isn't the same as knowing it. Your body has to learn it. Otherwise, it's useless when it counts. Mi Sohn nodded, but her expression said she wasn't quite convinced. She'd be one of the 12 later. I didn't know that then. The air inside the unit was always strange. Senior officers' quarters were stocked with goods smuggled in from China. The enlisted ate corn porridge twice a day. Walking through a minefield and surviving life inside those walls, honestly, not that different. The field had my notebook as a guide. The dangers inside the unit had no map at all. A seed was taking root. I kept looking away from it. But it was growing anyway, quietly, steadily, past the point of no return. That seed broke through the surface in the spring of my 5th year. April 2019. Training grounds near Chongjin, North Hamgyong Province. Morning roll call had barely ended when the entire unit was ordered to assemble on the parade ground. Those formations only happened for 2 reasons: commendations or executions. The moment I saw the post being driven into the center of the yard, my hands started shaking before my mind could catch up. They brought out Choi Myung-chol, a fellow recruit from my year in the special battalion. Quiet, reliable, the kind of soldier everyone trusted. The political officer stepped to the microphone and read the charges. Choi Myung-chol listened to enemy broadcasts and was contaminated by counter-revolutionary ideology. This constitutes a clear act of betrayal against the country and its people. He had listened to a South Korean broadcast. That was it. Standing there, something turned over in my head. If listening to that broadcast is a capital offense, what's in it? Whatever they were hiding, it had to be worth this much to bury. The execution was over in minutes. Nearly 500 soldiers stood on that parade ground. Not one person looked away. Everyone stared straight ahead, as if they'd seen nothing. So did I. That was the only way to survive. After the formation broke, Mi Sohn fell in step beside me and whispered, "Platoon leader, what do you think Myung-chol actually heard?" Eyes forward, I answered low and flat. "Doesn't matter. And don't ever say that again." She went quiet. So did I. But that night, I didn't sleep at all. Her question circled my mind for hours. "Don't need to know," I told her. The truth was, I already suspected. Whatever was in that broadcast, it probably held words we'd never been allowed to hear. You don't have to be hungry. You don't have to be afraid. Asking questions won't get you killed. What are we actually protecting? That question bore into my chest in the dark. We were taught protect the nation. Protect the people. But that afternoon, the state had just executed one of its own people. So what were we defending? Not the nation. Not the people. We were defending the fear itself. The fear that said touch this, and you die. After that night, I couldn't unsee it. I stopped pretending. I started reading the unit differently. When you learn to read the land, who steps where, how weight shifts across certain terrain, eventually you start reading everything else. Who watches whom? Which officer's light stays on past midnight? Which soldier stops appearing at formation without explanation? Once you see those patterns, the question stops being what are we training for? And starts being who are we being held by? I was moving toward the second answer. Every week, a little closer. A rumor moved through the unit: inspectors were coming down from command. Officially, it was a discipline review. But I felt it in my gut, this was fallout from Myung-chol's execution. Command had picked up on something shifting inside the unit. 4 days into the inspection, another soldier from our platoon vanished. No announcement. No reason given. One morning, his spot at formation was just empty. Nobody asked where he'd gone. Nobody answered either. That silence was worse than anything. That evening, Mi Sohn pulled me aside in the corner of the barracks. "Platoon leader, do you know what happened to Ri Myung-sik?" I glanced around, then dropped my voice. "No. And you didn't see anything, and you didn't ask." She looked down and nodded. But something in her eyes, I'd never seen it there before. It wasn't fear. It was fury. That scared me more than fear would have. Fear makes people go still. Rage makes them move. I was furious too. And I was spending more and more energy holding it down. That night, my mother's words came back to me, but for the first time, I heard them differently. When I enlisted, she'd said, "Soo Jin, no matter what happens, you come home alive. You hear me?" At the time, I thought it was just a mother's worry. The kind of thing every soldier's family says. But lying in the dark that night, I heard something else underneath it. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she understood that this country wouldn't take care of her daughter, it would use her and discard her. And that's why she said, come home alive. Not serve well, not make us proud. Come home alive. I pulled out my notebook, ran my fingers over the entries. Mind patterns, terrain, seasonal drift. And for the first time, this thought surfaced. Maybe this notebook doesn't only keep me safe in a minefield. Where that thought was leading I couldn't see yet. But something had already begun. Quietly, inside me, moving in a direction there was no coming back from. By the fall of 2025, the air inside the unit had gone cold in a different way. After Myung Chul was taken, people kept disappearing. Each empty space got filled with a new face and no explanation. Somewhere in those years, I'd become a platoon leader commanding 12 soldiers. The title sounded like authority. It wasn't. I received far more orders than I ever gave. Early October that year, our platoon received a special assembly order. Location: the basement conference room of battalion headquarters. Descending those stairs, something shifted in my chest. The air changed with each step down. Damp concrete, mildew, the smell of something old being kept sealed away. This isn't a conference room, I thought. This is where things get handled. 12 of us filed in. The door locked behind us. The fluorescent light on the ceiling buzzed and flickered, throwing our faces in and out of shadow, over and over. I pressed my hand against my chest pocket without thinking. The notebook was there, just needing to feel something solid. Major Park Hae-jeong dropped a sealed envelope onto the table. She scanned each of our faces, slow and deliberate. Then, quietly, what I'm about to say does not leave this room. Not a word. Inside the envelope was an order. My fingers went cold reading it. Our platoon was to conduct a covert infiltration operation across the southern border. Upon completing the mission immediately before withdrawal, all personnel involved were to be eliminated on site to destroy evidence. All 12 of us. And the final execution? The order specified that I would carry it out with my own hands. I read it again, then a third time. All 3 times, the words were the same. Nowhere in the document was there a single line about what happened to me afterward. There didn't need to be. I already knew. The person who pulls the trigger gets the same ending. I looked up and met Major Park's eyes. Major, is this real? She didn't answer. The silence was her answer. Above us, the light buzzed again, louder than usual, or so it seemed. When we walked out of that room, nobody said anything. Dinner time came. Nobody picked up a spoon. 12 of us sat along a long table. And the silence was so thick that setting down a single utensil would have sounded like a gunshot. I looked at each face in turn. Some were pale with shock. Some looked hollowed out. Mi Sohn sat with her jaw set and her lips pressed shut, holding back something that wasn't going to stay held much longer. Different expressions. Same thing underneath. We can't follow this order. After midnight, after final roll call, Major Park came back. She locked the door from inside. Faced all 12 of us. I'm on the list too. My name is in that order. We're all in this together. The room stirred. She had never been meant to come home either. Whoever issued this order had planned from the start to erase everyone who knew all 12 of us, and the major along with us. Mi Sohn's hands balled into fists. If we refuse, what happens? The major closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. Political prison camp. Best case. Worst case, you don't make it off the grounds. I waited for fear to hit me. It didn't. I'd been afraid for so long that there was no room left for more of it. Prison camp, death on sight, or follow the order. All 3 ended the same way. But the last one, I couldn't carry that. Not in any world where I was still a person. Driving a blade through the chests of my own soldiers. People I'd stood beside for years that would have destroyed something I couldn't rebuild. So I spoke. Major, I can't do it. Order or not, I can't. These are my people. She looked at me steadily. Nodded once. Neither can I. So we need to find another way. That night, the office's quarters blazed with warm yellow light. Every window, full and bright, the glow of people who were warm, full, and comfortable. In our barracks, we had one coal block between 12 of us. The cold crept up from the floor through our boots. Looking at that light from the inside of our cold, dark room, I understood something without needing words for it. That light and this cold were not a coincidence. They were the design. We were tools deployed when needed, silenced when finished. The warm order came down from behind those glowing windows. It was built to kill us in the dark. For the first time, I thought it clearly. No hesitation. No going back. We had to get out of here. After that night, the 12 of us were different people. On the surface nothing changed. 4 a.m. Wake up. Roll call. Training. Mess hall. Reports. Lights out. We performed every ritual exactly as before. But underneath it all, we were doing something else entirely. We were looking for a way out. 3 nights after the order, Major Park sat down next to me during the training log review. She kept her eyes on the papers and spoke in an even, casual tone, the kind of voice that sounds like nothing. Lieutenant Lee, you still have that notebook? Eyes on the log in front of me. Yes. She tapped a page with her pen. That's all we need. We built the path ourselves. We can walk ourselves out. I understood her immediately. That notebook held years of hand-recorded data on the DMZ. Minefields, the ones we ourselves had mapped and documented. The route from north to south. No one on Earth knew that terrain better than we did. We chose a crossing point near Cherwin, Gangwon Province. The ground there was a mix of clay and bedrock, stable enough that mines stayed put regardless of season. A pattern recorded in spring would still hold in winter. That reliability was everything. There was one more factor: the guard rotation gap. At this section ran 30 minutes longer than anywhere else along the line. 30 minutes. That was the window 12 lives had to move through. The afternoon before the crossing, I slipped away to the storage shed behind the barracks. Alone, I took out the notebook one last time. The edges of the pages were worn soft, with handling years of my own fingerprints pressed into the paper. I could smell the sweat in the binding. Page by page, I traced each entry with my fingertip. The Cherwin terrain map, the mine placement markers, the guard rotation times. Every line had been written by my own hand. Every line now carried 12 lives. I swallowed hard and closed the cover. The night before we left, I stepped outside alone. I was thinking about my mother. We'd lost contact years ago after the assignment. But that night, I needed to hear her voice. Her hands, spooning hot tofu rice into my bowl. Her voice telling me to eat before it went cold. I stood with my back against the cold barrack wall, eyes closed, holding onto that memory. She didn't know, couldn't know, where her daughter was going tonight, or what she was carrying with her. Mom, I'm coming home alive, just not the direction you're probably thinking. That was the only promise I could make. Departure day. We moved through the morning exactly as we always had. Roll call. Breakfast. The corn porridge that morning was rougher than usual, coarse ground, scraping the throat on the way down. I could feel every swallow. This might be the last meal I eat on this side of the line. I ate it slowly, not savoring it, just holding onto the moment a little longer. Afterward, Mi Son stepped beside me without looking at me. Tonight? I set down my chopsticks without a sound. Tonight. She gave one small nod. Nothing more needed saying. Everything between us fit into that silence we get across. No matter what. Through the day, we trained as normal. Kept pace with the drills. Followed commands. Held neutral expressions. But inside, I was running the route in my mind on a continuous loop. Entry point at the Cherwin section. First branching line. 10 steps forward, then 45 degrees right. I walked it mentally until my hands knew where to move. Before my brain had to think. There was no second chance on the ground. 11 p.m. We waited for the last patrol to pass alongside the barracks. Major Park pressed her back against the wall. Watched until the patrol disappeared completely. Then held up 2 fingers. 2 minutes. 12 people moved without a sound. Dark jackets over fatigues. Cloth wrapped around boot soles to muffle footsteps. Every time the fabric shifted against the rubber, even that slight friction, I stopped breathing. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. Heavy. Close. Like it was right behind my eyes. I pressed my hand against my chest pocket. Felt the notebook through the fabric. The shape of it, the weight of it. Then I fastened the button over it. In the dark, the major's voice came through low and steady. From this point no one speaks. Watch only my signals. We are getting across. All of us. I looked at each face one last time. In the dark, Mi Son's eyes were bright. Afraid, yes, but going anyway. Same as all of us. We stepped forward into the dark. The minefield was waiting. November 2025, 1:40 in the morning. When we reached the Cherwin entry point, I stopped and looked down at the ground. Even in the dark, I could feel the terrain beneath my feet, frozen surface. Clay and bedrock layered underneath, alternating like they always had. I'd walked soil like this hundreds of times in training. But not like this. Not knowing exactly what was buried under it. Not knowing that one wrong step could erase a person without a trace. Major Park pressed close beside me and whispered, "Su Jin, can we go in?" I didn't reach for the notebook. I had it memorized. I traced the first section in my mind and answered, "Yes, stay behind me. One step at a time, only where I step. Nowhere else." The major turned to the others. "You heard her. Single file. Don't deviate from the footprint in front of you. Not an inch." 12 of us lined up. I was at the front. The moment my foot touched the ground, my heart climbed into my throat. 6 steps right from this point. Then 12 steps straight. The 45-degree zone to the left, never touch it. The route unfolded in my mind like a map I could see projected on the dark. I walked it one step at a time. I barely breathed. More precisely, I couldn't. A deep breath would make my body shift. And that shift would travel all the way to my feet. The November air was a blade against my face, but I kept my mouth shut. Behind me, I could hear 11 sets of cloth-wrapped boots, making the softest contact with frozen ground. Small, rhythmic. As long as that sound continued, they were still there. Still alive. 2 minutes. That was our window before the guard rotation. We had to clear this section inside that window. Every instinct told me to move faster. I held it down. First rule of special operations mine detection: never rush. Panic and you die. I turned that over in my mind. Like a stone worn smooth again and again, each step. 1 minute gone. Halfway. Sweat was running down my back, but I couldn't wipe it. Both hands stayed at my sides. Weight distributed evenly across the full sole of each foot. 40 seconds more and then, from behind me, a sound. A foot sliding. I froze. Every one of us went still. The silence that followed felt like it had no end. Nobody moved. Those few seconds, no breath, no sound, were the longest of my life. I turned my head slowly. 3 positions back. Mi Sohn was down on one knee. Not a stumble. She'd caught herself, pressed a knee into the ground for balance. She was fine, but I knew exactly where that knee had landed. 11 inches inside the safe zone boundary marked in my notebook. 11 inches. The length of an adult foot. That was the margin between her life and the end of it. I didn't move my lips. I sent the message with my eyes alone, slowly. Don't stand up yet. Put your hands on the footprints in front of you. Come up that way. She read it, the smallest nod. Then, hand by hand, she placed her palms on the spots already proven safe and raised herself inch by inch. Holding her breath. I was holding mine. All 12 of us were holding ours. 12 hearts, suspended over frozen ground, beating in the same stopped rhythm. When she was fully upright, I finally exhaled. The breath rose in a small cloud of white in the cold air. I watched it disappear. Alive. Still. 20 seconds left. I moved into the final stretch, a slightly downward slope. On a grade like this, mines tend to shift low. I'd marked this section in red in the notebook. I shortened my stride, pressing each foot down. Deliberately, reading the ground through my soles. Is this safe? Is this safe? Every step a question. The sensitivity in my feet felt almost unnatural. Years of training finally earning their keep. Then it changed. The texture underfoot went soft. Yielding. End of the minefield. One more step. Same soil. Without turning around, I raised my fist slowly and held it up. We're through. One by one, the 12 of us crossed the line. The major came over last. She didn't say a word. She grabbed my wrist, held it hard for 1 second, then let go. That was all. It was enough. I can still feel the warmth of that grip. Total crossing time 4 minutes, 52 seconds. We'd blown past our 2-minute window. But the guard rotation hadn't happened. Providence. Or an accurate notebook. Maybe both. I closed my eyes briefly. Then we ran. All 12, together, south. Through the dark, the lights of a South Korean guard post began to flicker into view. The closer those lights came, the heavier my legs got. Strange. On the minefield, my body had been precise, responsive, completely alive. But now, with the destination right in front of me, I was draining. Not from relief. The opposite. In the minefield, everything was clear. Walk where the notebook says. Follow the path. But standing before that light, what were we now? 12 North Korean soldiers knocking on the door of the enemy. How would they see us? I genuinely didn't know. When we were 50 yards out, Major Park stopped. Hold. She waved us in close. We gathered around her. She looked at each of us once, then spoke quiet but with no hesitation. Before we go in, I need one thing to be clear. We are not people who ran away. We are soldiers who refused. Don't let that get lost. M.I. Sohn looked at her. What's the difference, Major? The Major kept her eyes forward. Defection is escaping to survive. Surrender is ending a fight by choice. We didn't run. We stood against that order. And we came here to finish what we started, to put what we saw. What was done to us, in front of the world. That's our last mission. That's why we crossed. Something settled in my chest when she said that. She was right. We weren't 12 starving, frightened people fleeing into the dark. We were soldiers who had been handed an order that no human being should follow. Kill your own people with your own hands, and we had said no. That refusal had carried us through the minefield. It had brought us here. We started walking again. 20 yards out, the lights inside the post shifted. Movement. Slowly, I raised both hands. Behind me, all 11 did the same. 12 pairs of hands reaching toward the sky in the cold dark. The signal that we were unarmed. But standing there, arms raised, it felt like something more than that. We are no longer that country's soldiers. The Major's voice rang out clear and steady. Soldiers of the Republic of Korea. We are members of the Korean People's Army Special Operations Battalion. We are not armed. We are not defecting. We are surrendering. The post went dead silent. I held my breath in that silence. The door opened. A South Korean soldier couldn't have been older than 22 came running out with his weapon raised. 2 more followed. All 3 had wide eyes, clearly stunned. 12 women soldiers standing with their hands up. Was not a scenario any of them had trained for. The young man's hands were trembling. Not from fear of us. From not knowing what to do. That trembling, I recognized it. It was the same thing I'd felt countless times. Scared. Thrown. No idea what comes next. Somehow, it steadied me. Don't move, he shouted, voice cracking slightly. Keep your hands up. Major Park stared straight down the barrel of his rifle and didn't flinch. We are unarmed. Search us, we'll cooperate. But one thing, we are carrying documents. Those documents must reach your commanding officers. That's all we ask. The 3 soldiers exchanged glances. None of them knew what to do with this. One stepped back, pulled out his radio, and began reporting in a tight, urgent voice. I caught fragments. 12 personnel. All female. Claimed to be surrendering. I glanced at M.I. Sohn. Her eyes were closed, hands still raised. Praying, maybe. I was doing the same thing inside. Please, let these documents reach the world. About 10 minutes later, a senior officer came jogging out. He took one look at the Major and stopped cold. You said surrender. Did you mean that? The Major met his eyes without blinking. We are not defectors. We are soldiers who refused a direct order. We carried proof of that order out with us. We need you to hand it to your intelligence services. That is why we are here. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Turned away, keying his radio. His report carried across the cold air. 12 personnel, all female, formal surrender declaration. Hearing those words travel out into the night, I finally understood, somewhere deep in my body, that we had actually made it. My legs buckled. M.I. Sohn caught my arm before I went down. Didn't say anything, just held on. I gripped her hand and, for the first time in hours, breathed. November air flooded my lungs. Cold, clean, sharp. The cleanest air I'd ever tasted. My first day in Seoul, I got lost inside my own mind. Before entering Hanawon, the government resettlement facility, I was transported by vehicle for a medical screening. I looked out the window at the highway. Cars moving at speeds that felt impossible. Buildings stretching in every direction without end. I sat there and couldn't speak. The number of structures I could see in a single highway stretch dwarfed everything I'd seen in all of Pyongyang. It wasn't just more. It was overwhelming in a way my brain couldn't immediately process. I'd been taught my entire life that this was enemy territory. But the enemy looked like this. Hanawon was located in Gyeonggi Province. A facility where North Korean arrivals receive orientation for life in South Korean society. That's how they explained it. Walking in the first day, fluorescent lights blazed down the hallway. Steady, unblinking light. I nearly cried looking at it. I thought of the basement conference room. The light that buzzed and flickered while I read the order that was meant to end us. Same kind of fixture. But this one simply stayed on. That difference felt enormous to me that day. Absurdly, inexplicably enormous. A counselor asked me on the first day, "If something's bothering you, speak up. You're allowed to say it here." I didn't understand what she meant. Back home, saying something was wrong meant the wrong became yours to answer for. I sat with the words a while, then asked carefully, "You mean here, I can really say anything?" She smiled. "As long as it doesn't break the law. That's the only limit." That night I pulled the covers over my head and cried for a long time. Not from grief. Not from fear. That sentence had shaken something loose. As long as it doesn't break the law, you can say anything. A thing that obvious. A thing I had never once experienced as obvious. The gap between that sentence and the world I'd come from hit me all at once, in the dark. Under a blanket in a building where nobody was watching. Culture shock arrived without warning. The first time I bought a drink at the Hanawan vending area. I stood in front of the refrigerator for over 5 minutes. Not because I couldn't choose. Because the act of choosing felt wrong. In the North, you received what was given. You ate what came out. Standing in front of that refrigerator, I was expected to decide for myself, and I had no idea how. So this is what freedom feels like at first. Foreign. Almost uncomfortable. The counselor beside me said, "Take your time. Nobody's going to take it." I laughed a short, surprised laugh. Then I reached in and took an orange juice. The first thing I had ever chosen for myself. Weeks into Hanawan, I began to find my footing. And the more I adjusted, the more certain things became impossible to ignore. One afternoon in class, they turned on the television. A news broadcast: a soldier had been injured during the training exercise. A military helicopter had been scrambled for an emergency evacuation. The camera showed medics sprinting alongside a stretcher. The anchor read out the soldier's name and age clearly. Kim, Private First Class. 21 years old. I stared at the screen and went still. In our unit, we had been designated evidence to be eliminated. After the mission was complete, all operational personnel to be neutralized on site. That sentence, cold and precise, is still somewhere in the back of my eyes. But here, a single low-ranking soldier's name was on national television. A helicopter had lifted off for him. The country had turned to watch. I watched his name appear on the chyron at the bottom of the screen, and tears started coming. It took me a while to understand why. It wasn't sadness. It was longing. Not for that soldier, for his country. For a country that treated a soldier's life like that. The order in the sealed envelope and that news broadcast overlapped in my mind. Until I couldn't tell which world was real. Is this really the same planet where soldiers live? When class ended, I went to the bathroom and stayed there for a while. After Hanawan, moving to Seoul, the hardest thing was the language. Not the vocabulary, the weight of habit. One afternoon at a convenience store, I stepped up to the register and said, "Comrade, how much for this?" The clerk blinked at me. Comrade? My face went hot. It wasn't a serious mistake. But the embarrassment cut deeper than I expected. Same people, same blood, 70 years apart, and even the words we use for each other have become foreign. You know this, how long this land has been divided since the Korean War. Language split, food split, even the texture of feeling toward each other. Pulled in different directions over 7 decades. All of it landed on me in front of a convenience store register. The nights were hardest. I thought about my mother in Pyongyang. My father, my brother, whether my disappearance had triggered the system of collective punishment, whether my family was paying for what I'd done. That possibility pressed down on me every night like something with weight. Separated families, a term I'd seen on television my whole life. Now it was mine. Mi Son came to my room one evening and sat quietly for a long time. Then, "Soo Jin, the best thing we can do for them is live well." I nodded. She was right, and I knew it. But longing doesn't yield to logic. I thought about my mother's hands. The tofu rice she spooned into my bowl. Eat before it gets cold. Now I live in a small apartment in Mapo district, Seoul. It's been over a year since I arrived. Some mornings I wake in the dark and forget, for a few seconds, where I am. I look up at the ceiling, and in the moment I recognize it's not the ceiling of the barracks. Something in me comes quietly back to life. That sounds strange, maybe. But that's what freedom feels like to me, each morning. No one waking me at 4 a.m. No roll call. Just I can get up when I want. That took getting used to. More than I expected. Freedom this complete felt heavy at first. Almost disorienting. I hadn't known it could feel that way. I'm telling this story because I need people to understand why we crossed. Not because we ran. Not because we were hungry or afraid. From the moment we held that order in our hands, we understood getting it to the world was our last mission. 12 soldiers who refused to do what no human being should. They carried that refusal across the minefield themselves, raised their hands in front of rifles, and said it plainly: we are not defecting. We are surrendering. That was the distinction that mattered. That was the truth of why we came. Major Park is currently in a secure facility following her NIS debriefing. The documents we carried were delivered to the appropriate authorities. What happened to them after that I don't know. But the fact that they exist in this world now cannot be undone. We made it across. The record is out there. Mi Son has been working part-time at a restaurant in Seoul. She came back from her shift one evening, glowing. Soo Jin, a customer left me a tip today. A tip. They said you get more if you do well. I laughed. And then, quietly, my eyes stung. Months ago, we were sitting in a room reading an order designed to end us. Now she was lighting up over a tip. Life just keeps going. It surprised me that it could still do that. I've been studying for a Korean language certificate. One day I asked the teacher, why is the same language so different between us? She thought for a moment. 70 years of separation, but the roots are the same. Once you start learning, you feel it how close it actually is underneath. That stayed with me. The roots are the same. Different words, different lives, but the same blood. That's what keeps me steady lately. If reunification ever comes, the first place I want to go is Moranbong, in Pyongyang. I want to walk along the Taedong River holding my mother's hand. Before I close, I want to ask you something. What do you think freedom is? Before I came here, I didn't know. In the North, the word existed. The thing it pointed to didn't. Now I know. Freedom is deciding for yourself what to eat in the morning. Not being punished for disliking someone. Being able to say this is wrong. And being able to stand in front of a camera and tell the story of what you lived through. That sounds ordinary. For me, each one of those things was everything. What you hold without thinking I had to cross a minefield to reach it. Some nights I think about my parents. What my father faced after I disappeared. Whether my mother still makes tofu rice. There's no way to reach them. That's what it means to be a divided family, a wound that doesn't close, just gets carried. Some of you may know that feeling. How many people in this country have carried that same longing since the Korean War quietly, for decades? I understand it now. And I know it doesn't go away. I read the word reunification differently now. In the North, it meant winning. Absorbing the South. Here, they say it means becoming one. I believe the second one. Not winning or losing two branches of the same family, separated for over 70 years. Finally finding each other again. Mi Son said to me one evening, Soo Jin, when reunification happens, I want to eat cold noodles in the North. Real Pyongyang naengmyeon. I smiled. Let's go together. I know the best place. We sat quietly for a moment after that. The silence wasn't sad. It was warm in a way that surprised me. Like maybe that bowl of cold noodles was actually possible. Like maybe that day was real, somewhere out ahead of us. I let myself believe it a little more each day. I hope we see it in our lifetime. The notebook is still in my chest pocket. The mind patterns are gone. In their place, I've started writing down the days ahead, the life I'm going to build. One last thing. I need to say it plainly. We 12 didn't cross because we wanted to survive. We crossed because we needed to say this is wrong. Using people as tools. Discarding them as evidence. That is wrong. Soldiers are human beings. We walked through the minefield to say that. We raised our hands in front of rifles to say that. If those words